The 1970 FIFA World Cup was the ninth FIFA World Cup, the quadrennial international football championship for men's national teams. Held from May 31 to June 21 in Mexico, it was the first World Cup tournament staged in North America, and the first held outside Europe and South America. Teams representing 75 nations from all 6 populated continents entered the competition, and its qualification rounds began in May 1968. 14 teams qualified from this process to join host nation Mexico and defending champions England in the 16-team final tournament. El Salvador, Israel, and Morocco made their first appearances at the final stage, and Peru their first since 1930. The tournament was won by Brazil, which defeated another 2-time former champion, Italy, 4-1 in the final in Mexico City. The win gave Brazil its third World Cup title, which allowed them to permanently keep the Jules Rimet Trophy, and a new trophy was introduced in 1974. The victorious team, led by Carlos Alberto and featuring players such as Pelé Rson, Jairzinho, Rivellino, and Tostão, is often cited as the greatest ever World Cup team. They achieved a perfect record of wins in all 6 games in the finals, as well as winning all their qualifying fixtures. Despite the issues of altitude and high temperature, the finals largely produced attacking football which created an average goals per game record not since bettered by any subsequent World Cup finals. With the advancements in satellite communications, the 1970 finals attracted a new record television audience for the FIFA World Cup as games were broadcast live around the world and, for the first time, in color. The World Cup returned to Mexico just 16 years later in 1986. Host selection. Mexico was chosen as the host nation in 1964 through a vote at FIFA's Congress in Tokyo on October 8, ahead of the only other submitted bid from Argentina. The tournament became the first World Cup hosted in North America, and the first to be staged outside South America and Europe. Mexico later became the first country to host the FIFA World Cup twice when it stepped in to stage the 1986 event after the original host selection, Colombia, suffered financial problems. Qualification. A total of 75 teams entered the 1970 FIFA World Cup, and 73 were required to qualify. Due to rejected entries and withdrawals, 68 teams eventually participated in the qualifying stages, including 8 for the first time. Mexico as the host nation and England as reigning World Cup champions were granted automatic qualification, with the remaining 14 finals places divided among the continental confederations. 8 places were available to teams from UEFA, 3 for CONMEBOL, 1 for CAF, 1 for an AFCOFC team, and 1 for CONCACAF. A place in the finals for an African representative was guaranteed for the first time, as a response to the mass boycott of the qualifying process for 1966 by the African entrants after FIFA linked Africa, Asia and Oceania together with only one qualifying place on offer. The draw for the qualifying stages was conducted on February 1, 1968 in Casablanca, Morocco, with matches beginning in May 1968 and the final fixtures being concluded in December 1969. North Korea, quarter-finalists at the previous tournament, were disqualified during the process after refusing to play in Israel for political reasons. El Salvador qualified for the finals after beating Honduras in a playoff match, which was the catalyst for a 4-day conflict in July 1969 known as the Football War. Half of the eventual qualifying teams had also been present at the previous World Cup, but 3 teams qualified for the first time, El Salvador, Israel and Morocco, while Peru returned to the finals after a 40-year absence. Those who failed to qualify included Argentina, France, Hungary, Portugal and Spain. Venues. 5 stadia in 5 different cities were selected to host the World Cup matches. Alternative venues in Hidalgo State and the port city of Veracruz were also considered. Each group was based solely in one city with exception of Group 2, which was staged in both Puebla and Toluca. Aside from the Estadio Luis Dosal, all the stadia had only been constructed during the 1960s, as Mexico prepared to host both the World Cup and the 1968 Summer Olympics. the altitude of the venues varied and the importance of acclimatization was strongly considered by all the participating teams. As a result, in contrast to the previous tournament staged in England, most teams arrived in the region well in advance of their opening fixtures to prepare for this factor. Some teams had already experienced the local conditions when competing in the football competition at 1968 Summer Olympics. At an elevation in excess of 2,660 meters above sea level, Toluca was the highest of the venues. Guadalajara was the lowest at 1,500 am. Final draw. Although it was reported in the build-up to the final draw that seedings would be used, as had been the case at the previous two World Cup finals, the FIFA organizing committee ultimately announced that there would be no seeding of teams. Instead, the 16 teams were divided into 4 geographical groupings, which also took into account the team's strengths and even political considerations. The system ensured that Israel and Morocco would not be drawn to face each other after Morocco had earlier threatened to withdraw from the tournament, as they had done from the Olympic football tournament 2 years earlier, if that were the case. The draw was staged in Mexico City, Mexico on January 10, 1970 in the Maria Isabel Hotel, which served as FIFA's headquarters during the competition. The teams were drawn into the 4 groups, which had their locations defined in advance. Group 1 being staged in Mexico City, Group 2 in Puebla and Toluca, Group 3 in Guadalajara and Group 4 in Liquiden. It was predetermined that the hosts Mexico would be in Group 1 and so based in the capital city, and that England as holders would be based in Guadalajara, the tournament's second-largest stadium. The 10-year-old daughter of Guillermo Corplas Edo, president of the Mexican Football Federation and the local organizing committee, drew out the teams from 4 silver cups. Match officials, squads. For a list of all squads that appeared in the final tournament, see 1970 FIFA World Cup squads. Tournament review. Group stage. Following the opening ceremony, host nation Mexico faced the Soviet Union. This was the last time until the 2006 finals that the host nation's first match rather than the World Cup holders began the tournament. Both this opening match of Group 1 and many others during the competition kicked off at noon for the benefit of European television schedules, meaning play under the midday sun. The match produced a goalless draw, prompting some media to predict the entire tournament would be played at the slow tempo that featured in this game given the conditions involved. Following the half-time interval, Anatoly Puzark became the first substitute to be used in FIFA World Cup history as the Soviets made use of the new competition rule. Both teams won their remaining 2 games to progress from the group at the expense of Belgium and World Cup debutants El Salvador. Group 2 was the lowest scoring of the groups with only 6 goals in its 6 matches as Uruguay, reigning South America champions, Italy, the reigning European champions, edged past Sweden and Israel. Sweden would have progressed if they had produced a 2-goal victory against Uruguay in their final game, but it was not until the final minute that they scored the only goal of the game. Hours before the game, FIFA elected to replace the scheduled referee after bribery rumors later dismissed by FIFA arose in Mexico. The 1-0 result meant Uruguay advanced, to be joined by Italy after they avoided defeat in the group finale against Israel. Owing to the lack of a seeding system, Group 3 allowed the reigning World Cup holders England to be paired together with the 2-time former champion Brazil, considered by many the pre-tournament favourites for the trophy. England's preparations were hampered by the arrest of their captain Bobby Moore in Colombia for allegedly stealing a bracelet from a jeweller's shop. The charges were later dropped. The attitude of their manager Alf Ramsey and the English media in general was perceived by many locals as unfriendly and xenophobic toward Mexico's hosting of the competition, which meant the English team received a largely hostile response during the competition. With both having won their opening games against Czechoslovakia and Romania, respectively. Brazil met England in the group's most famed match. Although Gordon Banks and the English goal denied Pelé copyright from close range with a reflex save that Pelé copyright himself cited as the greatest of his career, a second-half goal from Jairzinho won the match for Brazil after England squandered several excellent opportunities to equalise. Both teams then won their final group games to progress to the knockout stage. play in Group 4 began with Bulgaria taking a 2-goal lead against Peru, but a second-half comeback gave the South Americans a 3-2 victory. Morocco, the first African World Cup representatives since 1934, also began strongly by taking the lead against the 1966 runners-up West Germany, but the Germans came back to win 2-1. West Germany also went behind against Bulgaria in their second match, but a Gerd one-quarter hat-trick helped them recover and win 5-2. The eventual Golden Boot winner one-quarter hit another hat-trick the only hat-tricks of the entire tournament to win the group against Peru. Knockout stage, Mexico and the Soviet Union had finished tied at the top of Group 1 on both points and goal difference, meaning that the drawing of lots was required to rank them. On June 12 the draw ranked the Soviets as group winners, meaning that they would face Uruguay in the large Estadio Azteca, while the host nation were paired against Italy in the smaller Toluca venue. Mexican officials unsuccessfully appealed to FIFA to stage their game in the capital to avoid traffic problems. The hosts took the lead against Italy with a Jose copyright Luis Gonzalez goal, but his teammate Javier Guzmán equalized with an own goal before half-time. Italy then dominated the second half to progress to the semi-finals with a 4-1 win. The Soviet Union were also eliminated in their quarter-final when a Victor Esparrago header 3 minutes from the end of extra time sent Uruguay through. The All-South America tie in Guadalajara was the highest scoring of the 4 quarter-finals as Brazil recorded a 4-2 triumph over Peru. A rematch of the previous World Cup final between England and West Germany took place in Leeuwarden, in which the reigning champions entered a 2-goal lead. Franz Beckenbauer halved the deficit when his low shot beat England's second-choice goalkeeper Peter Bonetti, playing after Gordon Banks suffered food poisoning the day before. 8 minutes from time and Ursula header levelled the score before an extra-time goal from Gerd one-quarter brought Germany's first-ever competitive victory over England. All 4 of the semi-finalists were former world champions with the lineup guaranteeing a European versus South American final. In the All-South American tie, controversially switched from the capital to the lower altitude of Guadalajara, Brazil came from behind to defeat Uruguay 3-1 and earn the right to contest their 4th World Cup final. 2 Brazilian goals in the final 15 minutes decided a match that had been evenly matched until that point. The all-European meeting between Italy and West Germany produced a match regarded by many as one of the greatest World Cup games. Having led from the 8th minute through Roberto Boninsfna's strike, Italy were pegged back in injury time when sweeper Karl-Heinz Schnellinger scored his only international goal. Extra time brought 5 more goals as the lead swung between the two sides until Gianni Rivera gave the Azzurri a decisive 4-3 lead. The match subsequently became known as the Game of the Century, and today has a monument outside the Estadio Azteca to commemorate it. West Germany went on to defeat Uruguay 1-0 in the third-place match. In the final, Brazil opened the scoring when Pelé copyright headed in a cross from Rivellino in the 18th minute, but Roberto Boninsfna equalized for Italy after a series of blunders in the Brazilian defense. The match remained level until the 66th minute when a powerful shot from Gar copyright RSON restored the Brazilians' lead. Further goals from Jairzinho and Carlos Alberto rewarded Brazil's attacking play and secured a 4-1 victory and a record 3rd World Cup triumph, which earned them the right to permanently keep the Jules Rimet Trophy. Legacy. Both the Brazilian team that were crowned champions of the 1970 World Cup and the tournament itself have become regarded as among the very finest in the history of the FIFA World Cup. In contrast to the more physical style of play that had dominated the previous 2 tournaments, the 1970 finals are noted for the attacking play adopted by most teams. For the first time at a World Cup finals, referees could issue yellow and red cards, yet, in contrast to the previous tournaments and all subsequent tournaments to date, no player was expelled from play. The officiating of the opening match, commentated by some media as overly strict, set a standard of discipline that instead helped protect skillful players in accordance with FIFA's stated wish. The tournament's average of 2.97 goals per game set a level not since bettered. The eventual champions Brazil, led by Carlos Alberto, and featuring Pelé copyright, Clodoaldo, Gar copyright Rson, Jairzinho, Rivellino, and Tostão, is often cited as the greatest ever World Cup team. They won all of their 6 games on the way to the title, and had also won every one of their qualifying fixtures. Jairzinho's feat of scoring in every finals match likewise is yet to be equalled. Coach Mario Zagallo became the first man to win the World Cup as both a player and coach. This was the first World Cup to use the Telstar ball from Adidas, introduced as the Telstar Last for the 1968 European Football Championship. The Telstar was the first World Cup ball to use the now familiar truncated icosahedron for its design, consisting of 12 black pentagonal and 20 white hexagonal panels. The 32-panel configuration had been introduced in 1962 by Select Sport, and was also used in the official logo for the 1970 World Cup. The black and white pattern, to aid visibility on black and white television broadcasts, was also well established before the Telstar. The name came from the Telstar communications satellite, which was roughly spherical and dotted with solar panels, somewhat similar in appearance to the football. Results: Group stage, the first round, or group stage, saw the 16 teams divided into 4 groups of 4 teams. Each group was a round-robin of 6 games, where each team played 1 match against each of the other teams in the same group. Teams were awarded 2 points for a win, 1 point for a draw and none for a defeat. The teams finishing first and second in each group qualified for the quarter-finals, while the bottom 2 teams in each group were eliminated from the tournament. Tiebreaking criteria: teams were ranked on the following criteria: 1. Greater number of points in all group matches, 2. Goal difference in all group matches, 3. Drawing of lots by the FIFA Organizing Committee, Group 1. Note: having finished level on both points and goal difference, the Soviet Union and Mexico were divided by the drawing of lots. Group 2. Group 3. Group 4. Knockout stage. The 8 teams that had advanced from the group stage entered a single elimination-style tournament, which also featured a third-place playoff contested between the 2 losing semi-finalists. In this knockout stage, if a match was level at the end of 90 minutes, extra time of 2 periods would be played. In matches prior to the final, if the score was still level after extra time, then a coin toss by the referee would determine the winner. If the final was still level after 120 minutes play, then the match would instead be replayed at a later date. All times listed: local, quarter-finals, semi-finals, match for third place, final. Statistics: goal scorers, 10 goals, Gerdmar 1 Quartelaire, 7 goals, Jairzinho, 2 goals, 1 goal, own goals, Javier Guzmán. Awards: Golden Ball, Pelé copyright, Golden Boot, Gerdmar 1 Quartelaire, Best Young Player, T-Cubed Philocubillas, FIFA Fair Play Trophy, a Peru, FIFA Retrospective ranking. In 1986, FIFA published a report that ranked all teams in each World Cup up to and including 1986, based on progress in the competition, overall results and quality of the opposition. The rankings for the 1970 tournament were as follows: listed as number 13 in one of the sources, listed as number 12 in one of the sources. References. External links: FIFA report on the 1970 World Cup finals, details at RSSSF, History of the World Cup 1970, Planet World Cup Euro Mexico 1970, Brazil's Heroes of 1970 relive their days of glory.